body afterwards.
Yeah, and specifically, I mean, Dignity cannot basically work in Syria. How do you work in the Middle East, and are you able to reach some of the Syrians that have been tortured? Yeah.
We reach a few Syrians that have been tortured who have come to Denmark. So I have done a few medical examinations of Syrian refugees in Denmark. Those have basically been cases that have been brought to us because they have filed an asylum case in Denmark.
Yeah.
But what we do in other countries in the Middle East and North Africa is train partners to do medical legal documentation. So we train doctors and we train lawyers, because this is not, one thing is examining the victims or doing the interview, but it's also a specialized work of writing the report afterwards. So it's not something that any doctor or lawyer can do without training. So we try to train people in different countries on how to do this. And torture, unfortunately, is not a topic that's exclusive for Syria. So there are many countries in the world where torture happens. But of course, some of the partners that we can train in the Middle East, like Jordan, for example, that receives Syrian refugees, they will, some of the people that we train will be able to actually examine Syrian refugees or displaced people.
Yeah. I wonder if Mary and Alexandra can tell me, why do you think documentation is very important?
Well, I would first say, I mean, we saw it here that the Syrian conflict is until now the best documented conflict in the world. It not only shows us what is happening, but also it shows the scale of it, that it's not an individual incident, but that it's, as I said, systematic and widespread all over the country. Yeah, and it's, at this point, it also proves that it's no longer an internal armed conflict, that, as the person said, other states are very much involved, and that we are seeing a world war in that sense on a very smaller scale happening inside one country. That links to the argument that we all have a stake in it. And I mean, the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was created among the belief that we don't want the crimes that have happened in the Second World War to happen again. International crimes were given terms because we wanted to give words to the horrendous crimes that have happened, and when they happened at the time, we didn't have terms to describe them. Now we do have terms to describe them, but we also have images. We have witness accounts, and it's to understand our responsibility, it's to understand what is happening, because that is a form of solidarity that we can give to people that are very much affected by them.
Marie?
I, of course, completely agree with everything that has been said so far. I want to add at least one thing that has to do with what the documentation process does for the actual victim. At least when you, not obviously if you talk about bodies and pictures of dead bodies, this is not the case, but when you talk about people who have actually survived torture, a lot of them want their case documented because they say this should never happen again. So if you can use my story to hold people accountable or to do advocacy work of some kind, then I will be happy for you to do it. That's one thing. And the other thing is that many of these victims, one should think that if you experience a thing like that, you would want to tell the story to the whole world, because it's, but that's not how it works. Many torture survivors actually keep what they experienced a secret, and they try to protect other people from those horrendous stories that they might be able to tell. So for them to meet someone who in a professional capacity can listen to their story can for some also be part of a healing process for themselves.
Mary, I wonder if you can talk, you worked with the Istanbul Protocol. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about it, and also Alexandra, if you have any comment about it. Yeah.
Sure. The Istanbul Protocol is a document developed internationally in the late 90s by a group of professionals, doctors and lawyers and human rights experts, who realized that documenting is not a simple thing. We saw it in the film also, how some of those who had tried to document did not do it in a professional way, so there were things lacking. So these professionals came together in Istanbul and developed a protocol on medical legal documentation. So this is basically the standard for how to do this. So this is also the standards that we teach. And the Istanbul Protocol, as I said, it was created back in the 90s, and of course documents of this kind have a certain age limit, and some of the information is no longer valid. So what is happening right now is that the Istanbul Protocol is getting a supplement. It's not being revised as such because it's an internationally endorsed document. So opening it up for revision might be dangerous in the current political climate. But it's getting a supplement in which some of the things that are lacking in the current protocol will be added. And there's one particular chapter that we are very much involved in from Dignity's side, which is a chapter written not only for forensic doctors, which is the rest of the protocol, but a chapter written for ordinary doctors, lawyers, who don't have it as a profession to document torture, but who may come across torture survivors in their daily work in emergency rooms or in general practice, wherever they may come across, because this is not something that is taught very much in medical schools, for example. So usually the usual professional will not know how to do this unless he has some document to refer to.
Alexandra, we saw in the video that Cesar was very scared, even that now, like, he went to the US, he was still scared of all of this, and I think the same was for witnesses you guys talked to. Is there any witness protection program or anything like how do you try to protect these witnesses?
So there's a difference between Cesar, who's a defector of the regime.
Yeah, of course,
and he carries, of course, he has very much reason to be scared because the material he provided to the world is highly incriminating for the regime. The witnesses that we work with, first of all, we have, of course, attorney-client privilege. That means no information that is shared with us leaves outside. There is a possibility, and it varies among jurisdiction, to offer protection for witnesses. However, the evidential value of what a person is testifying for, meaning the crimes committed against them, is the highest if individuals do so in their own name. There is a possibility also in the investigation stage that witnesses remain anonymous to the public. So we have witnesses and survivors working with us whose name has not been revealed. They never spoke to the media and they don't want to do so, in particularly if their family is still in Syria, of course. And they are also, but when they testify, their name will be revealed to the prosecutor only, but that will be it. It won't leave outside those spheres.
Because also those who were in Turkey also were using fake names and
exactly. And may I add to the Istanbul Protocol?
Please,
I mean, it has been incredibly valuable also for our work to utilize documentation that has been done according to the Istanbul Protocol. And we have now, starting with our criminal complaint submitted in Austria, for the first time attached documentation of the survivors we worked with to not only corroborate their testimony, but also to show that they've been detained in a variety of detention facilities across Syria by the intelligence agencies. And what we see is that similar torture methods and tools have been used, although these detention facilities were not in the same city or region. This links, of course, to the fact that there is a policy in place, that at least there is some level of coordination among the different people who are in charge of these facilities. If not, they are linked to explicit orders. So it does not only show what has happened to the individual, but also, again, it underlines the system of torture that is happening in the country.
Yeah. And now the cases are in Germany and Austria. What is the next step?
So in Germany, we now have a first arrest warrant since June 2018 against a high-ranking Syrian official. His name is Jamil Hassan, and he is the director of the Air Force Intelligence. And the next step would be for him to leave Syria, to travel, because of this international arrest warrant, be arrested by a country that he travels to, and then be extradited to Germany, where he would stand trial. We don't know if this will happen or when this will happen, but we know that through our work and the work of Syrian organization, the work of the Office of the Federal Prosecutor, we kind of made this wall of impunity that the Syrian regime thinks it has. We start to sort of attack it and make it crumble a little bit, at least a little bit, and that individuals who are in charge of detention facilities or whole intelligence agencies, they have to be careful now if they want to leave Syria or travel, or in a couple of years go to Europe and go shopping or visit their son who's at a university somewhere, that they cannot do it without thinking about it, and that they have to confront the fact that they carry some responsibility for the deaths of thousands of people. And another development in France is that there also have been 2 remarkable arrest warrants very recently, and in particular in Austria we hope for that. So in Austria it's a bit different than in Germany. We don't have a war crimes unit established. So what we demand with our legal intervention is to establish such a specialized unit, because survivors are also in that country. They have the legal basis to become active. We ask the Austrian state to put resources and structure and expertise in place to investigate such crimes also in Austria. And we also want to encourage European member states to work together in the context of what is called mutual legal assistance, that the Austrian authority asks Germany on a particular crime site, on a particular suspect, what they already have, because we also believe that it cannot be the task in reality of one European member state to address what is happening in the Syrian conflict. I mean, very much these war crimes units operate with limited resources, with limited staff, and so we say that a transnational collaboration among European member states is needed in order to address this meaningfully in a legal way.
Fantastic. I think